All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm going to be your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. And you're listening to us on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. X Zone Nation, my first guest tonight is all the way in the United Kingdom, and she got up early, or she's going to bed. I get so mixed up with the times. But anyway, her name is Ruth Roper WYLDE, and we're going to be talking about the paranormal. She is a paranormal researcher and author. And Ruth, welcome to the X Zone. And it's nighttime there, right?
It's nighttime here, yep. It's just coming up for bedtime.
Oh, geez. Well, thank you so much for staying up and joining us. I'm looking forward to sharing the next hour with you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, dear.
So I first got interested in paranormal when I was a kid, because we moved into a house in a small hamlet in England, in the village in the county of Hertfordshire, which is just a few miles north of London. And our house, we very quickly found out, had quite an active poltergeist in it.
Ooh.
So it would literally chuck things about, turn the lights on and off, make incredible loud noises in the middle of the night, like glass smashing and things falling. When you got up to check, there was nothing disturbed. It would wait until you were standing in front of the cooker and then make the noise of a pane of glass smashing on the ground immediately behind you.
Oh.
Make you jump. Spun a knife across the kitchen once. Folded up a tea towel in front of my mother and I once. So yeah, it was really quite active. And my mother was a radio engineer in the RAF, the British Air Force, before she got married and had children. So she had a really practical turn of mind about these things, was quite sceptical and wanted to always know the scientific reason behind whatever was happening. So she never reacted with fear or sort of hysteria or anything like that. She would just calmly watch whatever was going on and then try to find an explanation for it. And I think that kind of instilled in me the desire to find out what was happening. So I started sort of trying to read up on it, and without giving my age away too much, but this was before the age of computers.
Oh, I hear you. I know where that is.
So, yeah, I'm really that old. So, your only recourse was to find books in the library or bookshops or whatever, or maybe a magazine article if you were really lucky. And I quickly found that there was, particularly here in England, there were so many stories that were really, really old. And they were set in old castles or old monasteries or whatever. And the ghost was last seen in 1824. And I just really wasn't interested in that. I was living in a modern house on a modern housing estate, in a perfectly ordinary family with something chucking things around my kitchen. And I wanted to know if there was anybody else having that same sort of experience. So, that's where I sort of got my interest. And I started keeping a card file, because again, back before computers, on the ones I found that were actually modern rather than really old. And that just sort of stayed as a hobby throughout my life then, as I grew up and had my career and, went through life. And when I managed to take partial early retirement at the age of 51 a few years back, I thought, well, now I've got the time to actually do something with all these databases of information about the paranormal. So I decided I'd put it in a book, rather foolishly thinking I'd put it in one book at that point. And here I am, just getting ready to write book number 9.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list here.
You can't fit it all in one book.
I'm looking at the list here, and you've got, let's see, the Ghost of Marston, Vale, the Almanac of British Ghosts, the Roadmap of British Ghosts, the Roadmap of British Ghosts Volume 2, the Haunted Times Volume 1, These Haunted Times Volume 2, These Haunted Times Volume 3, and These Haunted Times Volume 4. That's one heck of a big one book.
It sure is. And I really did learn a lesson with that, the Roadmap of British Ghosts, the first one, because I genuinely, and this shows how dumb I was at the time. No, it really was. Because I thought this will be the definitive book on all the ghosts that haunt the British roadways. Because I'd spent years researching it, and I thought I'd found them all. Okay. So I called it the Roadmap of British Ghosts. Mm-hmm. But the trouble was, my ethos when writing is, having found a source story, I then go out to the public on all sorts of social media and shop windows and in person, however I can find to do it. And I get their stories to see if anybody's actually experienced it in modern times, to see if I can find correlations. And what I found was, yes, I found loads of correlations, but people would also answer and say, well, I haven't seen anything on that road, but I had a really weird experience on the road round the corner or 5 miles away, or... So on the database they went, and before I knew it, I had enough for another Roadmap of British Ghosts. And that's when I learned to start using volume numbers.
Now, would I be correct in understanding that the roadmaps of British Ghosts is where ghosts have been seen on the roads, or is
yes, so roads, tracks, highways,
holy cow,
wooded paths, that sort of thing. Anything that's not a building, basically.
And how come there's so many ghosts on the roads?
Do you know, that's quite a fascinating question when you really, really stop to think about it. And what I find really interesting is I found so many correlations. So, for example, if you have a piece of road that has a legend on it that, I don't know, there's, say, a black monk is said to be seen crossing it. We get a lot of black monks in England. And you go out on social media, you go out to the public, what you find is a lot of people experience paranormal things along that same stretch, but they're not the black monk.
Oh.
They're seeing other things that they can't explain, but all in that same location. And that's when you really get into the fascinating, well, what is it about that location? Why is that little stretch of road sort of somehow attracting all this paranormal activity? And it really is fascinating that you get so many little areas of road. And even when the roads change, here in the UK, we're forever building new roads and whatever, because we're such a small geographical location compared to you over that side of the pond.
Right.
That we're forever having to build roads over and on top of roads and towns on top of towns. And, so if you dig down through our soil strata, you get thousands of years below it. So Lord knows what was there originally.
I understand.
That might be the cause, or is it just that the land itself somehow attracts that activity? It's really hard to tell, but it is fascinating.
Wow. So just based on the books you've written so far, how many ghosts have you chronicled, or how many locations have you chronicled?
Oh, several thousand, I should imagine.
My
I don't think
Lord.
I've ever sat and counted it up, Rob.
My
a
Lord.
lot.
Yeah, a lot.
There are literally hundreds in every book, and I'm on. There's 8 books published. So yeah, there must be thousands. Yeah.
So people must be seeing ghosts all the time, if there are so many ghosts.
the funny thing is that when I first started out on this venture, and I thought, you know, I want to write about this, that means I'm going to have to start talking to people about it rather than just be interested in it myself.
Right.
And I really thought, I'm going to get laughed at, I'm going to get people, you know, really taking the mick, as we say here in England, about my interest. And what I found instead was that most people, and honestly, I would say that 9 out of every 10 people, the answer I get from them is, oh, I don't believe in the paranormal. But there was this one time, you know, when I saw something really weird, and 9 out of 10 people, I would say, at least once in their life that that contact me, have had something, or that I speak to, have had something happen at some point in their life that they can't actually, account for, as it were. So loads is the answer. Loads of people that experience it.
I do agree that the United Kingdom is very old and it's had a marvelous history. A lot of wars fought on that little island, and
There sure have been.
Yeah, and why do the ghosts stick around? Why don't they go to that light place that many paranormal investigators tell us about?
Well, my honest view on that is it depends on what is actually causing any given phenomena. So I still sit on the fence, even after all these thousands of entries that I've made, and, you know, the research I've done and the people I've spoken to, and my own experiences, because obviously I do a lot of actual ghost hunting. I go to a lot of these places if I can. My thought is that there is not one explanation for what is happening. So no one answer fits all the data.
Wow.
So some data, it absolutely looks like what you've got there is the spirit of somebody who was once living, who's hanging about. Other data, to me, looks much more like it's pointing towards some kind of other entity, some kind of trickster entity. Here in England, we might refer to them as boggarts or sprites or elementals. There's something else that wasn't necessarily ever human. Then I think there's some things that are just kind of like a replay of something that happened, where it's just kind of like almost like a recording coming back.
All right, you and I have to take our first break, so please stand by. Exonation, fascinating lady with fascinating stories, thousands of ghosts, and that's just on the roadways. Our special guest is Ruth Roper WYLDE, and if you'd like to find out more about Ruth, visit her on Facebook, facebook.com/Ruth Roper WYLDE. I'm Rob McConnell, this is the X Zone, and we'll be back on the other side of the short break as we continue from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, and on the, your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming at classic1220.ca.
Winding your way down Baker Street, lighting your
Welcome back, everyone. Our guest this hour from the United Kingdom, where it's nighttime over there, is our guest, Ruth Roper WYLDE. And if you'd like to contact Ruth and find out more about her and chat with her about some experiences that you may have had that you might be interested in, her Facebook page is Ruth Roper WYLDE, and that's RUTHROPERWYLDE. Tell us about your most thrilling paranormal investigation that you worked on.
I'll tell you about my most surprising one, if that's okay.
Oh, definitely.
So I happen to really love the Scottish Highlands. They're very remote. They're one of the most remote bits of Britain left.
Yeah.
My husband, on the other hand, not that keen on them. So one year I was sort of bemoaning the fact that I'd quite like to do a holiday up in the Scottish Highlands, and he said, "Well, nobody's stopping you, but I don't want to go." And I thought, good point. I could just go on my own with the 2 dogs. So off I set, and I found the most remote cottage I could possibly find. I mean, it was literally 53 miles down a single track road, which for the UK is really remote. And on my first day there, I decided to do a little trek out because I'd obviously done a really long drive the day before. And I went down this dead-end road that was 8 miles long and went up one side of the mountain and down the other side into a steep down valley with a small Scottish loch at the bottom. Absolutely gorgeous and picturesque, not been touched for centuries, because there was a little sign saying this has been left untouched, but since the Scottish clans were in the Highlands.
Right.
But all there was this one road and this bridge that spanned the end of the loch where it turned into a little river. And I drove my car over the bridge. As I went over it, this bridge made this awful clanging noise because it was metal plates laid on a metal girder structure, which made me jump. Road came to a dead end, so I thought, well, I'll go back to that bridge, park up, and take some photos up and down the loch because it's really pretty just there. So I go back to this bridge, drive back across it, which is all clang, 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 clang with this metal. Park the car up, open the boot of the car, and I'm just getting my dog, which is Belgian Malinois, out of the back of the car. Now, he's very highly trained and knows not to get out of the car unless he's given permission.
Right.
But for some reason, he actually jumped out the back of the car, which he never does. So I'm bent down, clipping his lead on and scolding him for jumping out of the car without permission, when I hear the sound of an engine, which made me think of a quad bike engine. So it was that high revvy noise that quad bikes make. And the bridge started clanging right next to me because I'm parked right next to the bridge.
Oh, brother.
So I'm bent over, if you imagine, clipping the lead on a dog. And I stand up to look to see what's come, thinking, oh, I hope I'm not blocking wherever this quad bike wants to go. And as I move from the bent over position to the standing upright position, so what, a split second, the noise stops completely. Absolutely nothing to be seen, absolute silence, no engine anywhere near, and I am 8 miles away from the nearest even possible human habitation. And I just stood there staring at this bridge that's literally about 5 feet away from me, with my jaw on the ground, thinking, what the heck just happened there then? So then I thought, well, maybe a boat went under it, went under the bridge. Perhaps that's what made the bridge clang. So I walked out onto the bridge and looked over, where I discovered that actually the little river under it is only about 3 inches deep. So there's no way even a kayak would get under it, let alone a boat with an engine.
Oh, heavens.
And at this point I realised that my dog is acting really distressed. He's whining and crying on the end of the lead. And I think, well, that's odd. So I walk him back off the bridge and I walk him about a little bit. He wouldn't settle. So I put him back in the car and I drove about a mile up the road to where there was another little parking space and there was an information board. And I thought, I'll get out and read that information board. I got out the car. My dog is his normal happy self, wanting to play ball, not at all distressed, perfectly happy. And I thought, I really should have listened to him better because he was picking something up at that bridge, and that's why he jumped out of the car in the first place, because obviously he's very protective with being a Belgian Malinois. And he was obviously sensing that there was something just not right about there. And I can't explain what that noise was that came across the bridge for that split second, but it was the high revving sound of an engine, and that bridge started clanging.
Do you think it might have been a rift in time or a dimensional crossover?
I think that's the most probable explanation, that I heard something, like you say, like an echo in time or something. It couldn't have been from very far back, given the sound of the engine. But, I wasn't out ghost hunting. I've searched that area and there's no known stories about it being haunted. So I wasn't in any way thinking about the paranormal, or I was just having a nice day out sightseeing.
Right.
And yeah, well, it decided to jump on me anyway. Follows me around now, wants to get in the book. That's what it is.
Why do you think, Ruth, that some people are more attuned to paranormal activity than other people?
Honestly, I believe it's a matter of paying attention. And I know that sounds daft, but
No, not
my
really.
husband and I do quite a bit of shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And I have often sat out in the fields watching somebody walk across the field, perhaps walking their dog or whatever. And they never notice my husband and I sitting there, in a hide with guns. And I look at them and I think, you're just unaware of your surroundings. So how much else are we unaware of every day?
Right.
As we go through normal life? I've got several accounts of ghosts that haunt city streets in the middle of the day. And these are busy city streets, and the only way people see them is because they suddenly do something odd, like disappear right in front of them. But other than that, they thought that they were a normal person. So how many times do the rest of us drive past or walk past somebody in a street or whatever, and because we didn't happen to turn round at the moment it disappeared, we just carried on walking and didn't pay much attention? How many times do we actually not see it when it's actually happening? And another way of thinking about it, we have a little bird here in the British Isles called the robin redbreast. Very, very common. They're all over the place, and almost every back garden has one, because they're very territorial and they tend to make one back garden their territory. And you hear them quite often, but you rarely see them. And I think the paranormal's like that. It's there all the time. It's just we don't always get attuned to it or pay attention to it. And I think the people who see and experience more have just become more attuned to it. Perhaps they had something happen, so they're more afraid of it, or perhaps, they've, like me, they've got an interest in it, so they're kind of looking out for it more. But I think it's all about how much attention you pay. I think it's there all the time.
The reports that you get of these anomalies or these ghosts on the highways, do more than one person see them? Does more than one person have any interaction with these ghosts, or are these just sporadic?
In many cases, it's more than one person. So I think my record for one particular road, I think I'm up to about 9 now, and spread over a 3-decade period. And that's only the people that have seen that I'm asking and have got back in touch with me. So you can imagine that there must be more that have never heard of me, don't know I'm asking, don't know to get in touch, mustn't there? I must, just by logistics, I must only be getting hold of a certain percentage of the population that's ever driven along that road. But I've now got about 9, and all of them, they're not all seeing quite the same thing. They're not seeing it at the same time of day or night. Sometimes they see it at night, sometimes it's during broad daylight. But all of it is to do with a horse.
A horse?
A horse. So the original source story that I found was a farmer working on the ditch on the side of the road, and he heard the sound of a horse galloping, stood up and looked around him just in time to hear the horse crash through the hedge next to him and gallop on down the road, but there was nothing to be seen. That's the original source story. And when I went out and asked for other people's versions, for example, I've got one lady coming home from a night out on the town, back to this small village with her friends in the car, got the car headbeams on, and all of a sudden the headbeams, jumping out of the hedgerow, galloped across the little lane in front of her and through the hedgerow on the other side, was a horse, but it was only the outline of the horse, not filled in. So her headlights just picked up the outline of a horse galloping across the road. It freaked them all out completely. Another man
imagine
who lives
it would,
in the little village there. Sorry.
Yeah, I said I imagine this would freak people out. But how do we explain that this ghost of a horse, let's just use the horse for example, has enough mass to move bushes aside to actually make the sound of a horse when it's really not there?
Who knows? That's a really good question. Because yeah, how is it making a sound? And it does make sound, this one, because I've got another chap who has a little cottage on the high street there at the village that this lane goes into.
Right.
And his front door opens straight out onto the street. It's a little tiny old cottage. And he stepped out one evening to put his milk bottles out and stood for a minute just enjoying the night air. It's about midnight. And he heard the sound of a horse clopping down the street. And he thought, who the heck is out riding a horse at midnight? And then he thought, oh my God, is somebody stealing a horse? So he looked down the high street, couldn't see anything, but the sound of the clopping hooves came past him, past his cottage and on down the lane and faded away, with him never seeing anything, just hearing it. And he said, I don't believe in the paranormal, but I can't explain what I heard that night. He said, and people have tried to tell me maybe it was just the sound of a Coke can rolling in the wind. He said, but A, there was no wind,
Right.
and B, I do know the difference between the sound of a rolling Coke can and a horse's hooves, you know.
That
Because
is,
sometimes I do think the explanations that people try to come up with are weirder than the actual thing that happened.
all right, you and I have to take our bottom of the hour break, so please stand by. Fascinating stories, and thank you very much for joining us at this late hour at your end. We appreciate
Oh,
you
it's
being
my
with
pleasure.
us. Exonation Ruth Roper WYLDE is our special guest, and if you'd like to contact her or check her out, visit her on her Facebook page, Ruth Roper WYLDE. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220. Ruth and I will be back on the other side of this break. Please don't go away.
Slow down, you move too fast. You got to make the morning last. Just kicking down the cobblestones, looking for fun and feeling groovy. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, feeling groovy. Feeling groovy. Hello, lamppost, what you knowin'? Come to watch your flowers growing. Ain't you got no rhymes for me? Do it and do, feeling groovy. Ba-da-da-da-da.
And welcome back, everyone. Ruth Roper WYLDE is our special guest. We're talking to Ruth about her books and Exonation. She has written 8 of them that we have here on our list. I understand you've got a 9th book that you just completed, or you're finishing out your 9th book?
I'm just right in the middle of writing it and researching my 9th one. And I'm hoping it's going to be about American ghosts for a change.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right, and Exonation, the books that Ruth has written so far are The Ghost of Marston, Vale, The Almanac of British Ghosts, The Road Map of British Ghosts, The Road Map of British Ghosts, Volume 2, These Haunted Times, Volume 1, These Haunted Times, Volume 2, These Haunted Times, Volume 3, and These Haunted Times, Volume 4. And where can people get copies of your books?
So most good bookstores will order them in for you. But generally they're just available on Amazon, and you can have them as ebook or paperback. And if you happen to have Kindle Unlimited, you can even read them for free. Can't be bad.
Now, The Ghosts of Marston Vale. Is this one of the road maps where the ghosts are?
This is actually my village.
Oh.
So, yeah. So I live in a tiny little village called Marston Mortain. And the valley that it sits, well, it's a very shallow valley, but it gets called a valley.
Okay.
It is called Marston Vale. And when I decided I wanted to write a book for those databases I've been keeping, I had absolutely no idea how you go about writing a book or publishing it or anything else. So I thought I'd better start with something quite small. So The Ghost of Marston Vale is just a very small book. It's only about 60 pages, I think. It's very small. And it is just about the ghosts around here in this valley that I live in. and some of the old legends and so on. And I just used it as a way of testing out the water to see how you write a book and how you get it published. But I did actually meet with the people whose stories are in there and interview them all in person because, of course, we all live in the same location.
Right.
So I had lots of nice meetings over coffee up at the local cafe up at the Forest Centre, and had people tell me their actual stories, their haunted houses face to face, because there were some really interesting. Because even in just such a small area of this, we had quite a number of hauntings. So that's what that one is about. It's all the hauntings right around where I live.
Now, the ones that you do for the roadmap for the ghosts and where the ghosts are located, have any of these stories been validated by your local constabularies?
In some cases, they have. So in some cases, the source story has got police involvement in it. There's one particular one, I forget exactly where the road is, but it's sort of Hampshire way, around there. And it was actually reports to the police of people on one particular night. Loads of people rang into the police to say they weren't able to stop because it's dual carriageway, but they saw a car careen across the carriageway and plunge off the embankment. So the police were obviously dispatched to go and see it. And after quite a bit of searching, what they found was much further down the embankment in all the undergrowth was an old car that had been there for about 3 years with a dead person in it who'd been missing for 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
Who they then subsequently identified, and so you can read all the actual newspaper reports at the time of when they found this this wreck and the body, and this had never been he'd been reported missing, but he was in London, and nobody thought there was any reason to look out where he was actually found. Nobody knows why he went out that way that night. Nobody knows where he was going. So at the time he went missing, the search was all within London, and they never did find him. It stayed open as a cold case until this night, when suddenly loads of people rang in to the police saying that you've just seen this car crash, and there was no current car crash. The only thing they found was this old car crash. So some kind of replay actually led the police to closing that cold case.
Just like the ghost is saying, hey, I'm down here. I want to be found.
I'm down here, yeah.
I want to bring closure to my family because they're worried about where I am and so on. And that kind of makes it like an intelligent haunting or an intelligent apparition.
It's either intelligent or there was a momentary time slip. And what they saw was a time slip of his actual headlights going off the road. It's one or the other, isn't it? It's got to be one or the other. But either way, that's what happened, and that's a matter of record. So
fascinating stories,
isn't it?
It truly is. It truly is. Because of the age of the United Kingdom as well as the history, it's very rich in history. Do people report seeing knights as ghosts?
I've got a couple of knights. I've got a Bronze Age horseman.
Wow.
I've got a couple of Roman soldiers in my books that people have told me about that they've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them was particularly interesting. I think it's in one of These Haunted Times volumes, because what happened with These Haunted Times is when I was researching for the road map ones, people, of course, would write into me and say, well, I've not seen anything on the road, but my house is haunted, or my place of work is haunted, or the pub I go to is haunted. So I sort of had to start a new series to put all of those in. And this particular one there was a chap who had to keep the actual location secret because he was the archaeologist dealing with it. And they were dealing with this particular site in the south of England where they had a Roman temporary way fort.
Right.
They thought that they were looking at. And a lady came up to them who was often out walking her dogs and said, she said, are you going to be building over this? I hope you're not going to disturb the soldier. And he said, what soldier? What is it? She said, well, there's the ghost of a soldier up here, a Roman soldier, and he always stands on this hillside looking out that way. And and he's carrying a spear and a shield, and he's dressed in green. And the archaeologist said to me, he said, I didn't say much to her, we're sort of very interested, thank you very much, we'll be respectful of that sort of thing. He said, but the really interesting thing was, most people would picture, because of, Hollywood and what have you, that Roman centurions wore red with those short little armour skirt things they had, I don't know what they're called, and, and the breastplates and what have you. But here in the UK, there was one division of the Roman army that came across as part of the invasion of Britain who wore green. So unless she was a real buff of history, then she was actually seeing the ghost of one of the soldiers that would have been in that way station that they were busy surveying when he was there when she knocked on their little hut door. So that was a Roman soldier still on guard all these centuries later.
Tell me, Ruth, how has being an author of these ghost stories and the content that you have been able to accumulate, how has it changed your life?
It's made me very, very wary when I go out on a ghost hunt. Nobody is allowed to turn on a EVP recorder in my car, and nobody is allowed to turn on an EVP recorder anywhere near my house because I don't want any of them following me home. Thank you very much. And I have to say, I hunted the whole year. It so happened that this particular haunted road, not far from me, every fortnight I would drive down. It's about 10:30 at night on my way to a particular thing I did every fortnight. And so for a whole year, I kept my eye open for this particular ghost. And when I finally saw it, it scared me so badly, which is unusual for me because it takes a lot to scare me normally. I've been unable to drive down that road on my own after dark ever since.
Oh, my goodness.
I can go down it if my husband's in the car with me.
Right.
But I just can't bring myself to drive down it on my own. And it drives me nuts because it's so unlike me. I quite happily go ghost hunting on my own. And I'll quite happily sit in a haunted room on my own in the dark and wait for something to happen. But something about that apparition scared the bejesus out of me.
What did the apparition?
And I haven't been able.
What did the apparition look like?
It was almost identical to what everybody else says they see on that road, except everybody else, he's facing them. And when I saw him, he was facing away from me, so I never actually saw his face. But he's a heavy-set, older chap wearing some kind of big, like we would call them donkey jackets here in the UK, but like a big duffel-coated, work jacket.
Okay. Heavy
work trousers, heavy work boots. When I saw him, he was stood at the side of the road, facing away from me with his shoulders hunched and his head down. But the really freaky thing about him was, instead of being in just normal muted colours that your headlights would pick up, he was made up of a patchwork. It was one of those nights where it was both foggy and there was a mist rising as well as fog falling, and there was frost and there was a full bright moon. So you kind of drove in and out of patches of fog and then mist just rising up off the road, and then glittery, frosty patches. And his whole outline and filled in was made up of patchwork of those colours.
Wow.
So grey and black and sparkly, frosty colour.
How many? I'm sorry.
And I can't even tell you why he was scary, because he was looking away from me. But there was just something about him that just put the hairs up on the back of my neck, and I just did not dare turn the car around and go and look for him again. And he appeared at a moment when I had full view ahead of me on the road to the full length of my main beams on the car, and yet he suddenly appeared right in front of the bonnet of my car.
Wow.
So, and yeah, it just absolutely terrified me. So it has changed me in a way, and I'm a bit more wary about driving at night in certain locations. I'm a lot more wary about driving my motorbike at night, because I really don't like the feel of the thought of something getting on the back of the motorbike.
Oh, look, honey, I brought home a hitchhiker.
God, yeah, don't.
Yeah.
I've got quite a few hitchhiker stories which you actually first-hand.
Well, why don't we hear about a couple of them when we come back from this break? How's that?
Sure.
All right, Exonation, our guest this hour is Ruth Roper WYLDE. And we're talking about ghosts. Ruth is a paranormal researcher and author. If you'd like to contact her, visit her Facebook page at Ruth Roper WYLDE. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, and we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming around the world on classic1220.ca.
Just the music on the radio. No one's coming, no one's gone. The telephone, just me and you, and the lights down low. And we're slow dancing, swaying to the music. Slow dancing, just me and my girl.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, and my very special guest this hour, all the way from the beautiful United Kingdom, is our guest, Ruth Roper Wilde, and she is an author and a paranormal investigator. First of all, Ruth, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Great pleasure talking to you. And before we went to the break, we were talking about hitchhiking ghosts that you yourself have had first-hand experience with.
Well, I've had witnesses talk to me about the experiences they've had. Mm-hmm. Because when I, was first researching, and there's quite a lot of stories of hitchhiker ghosts around the UK, and I genuinely thought they were just urban myth, most of them, urban legend. But I've actually talked to a couple of people, and there's one that springs to mind particularly, where a ghost has got in their car. And this particular one was a chap who was driving home, not particularly old chap, mm-hmm. Quite young, driving home on his own after dark. And something caught his eye in the footwell of the passenger seat next to him. So if you imagine you're driving, it's dark, but you sort of see something glint in the passenger footwell, and you sort of glance sideways with your eyes and think, what have I left on the passenger floor?
Yeah.
And every time he glanced, and this happened over a period of maybe 30 or 40 seconds, so quite a short period of time, but terrifying when you're driving. When he first glanced, it was just a little glint of metal. When he glanced again, there was a sort of buckle and a shoe forming. When he glanced again, he'd got the lower part of a leg, and then a knee, and then a person sitting in the seat next to him for a second who was grinning at him, wearing old-fashioned, what we'd call breeches with stockings and those sort of buckled shoes that they used to wear back in the 1800s. And he actually came very close to crashing the car because his instinct, of course, was to jerk away from what was sitting next to him.
Yeah.
And in doing so, he kind of jerked the wheel, and that made him look forward and hurriedly get the car, sort of hit the brakes and try and get the car under control before he crashed. And he sort of looked back in terror, and it had gone. Whatever it was had gone. And he drove home in quite a state. Said he's never been so grateful to get to the outskirts of the place where he lives, where there were street lights. To get off the dark road sort of thing. And funny enough, as he walked through the door, although it was quite late in the evening, his mum was still up, and she looked and said, "You look like you've just seen a ghost, son." Funny you should say that, Mum. Actually just have in the damn car. But yeah, that's why I have quite a strict rule about no EVPs in my cars. Thank you very much. I don't want them materialising in my cars.
Doing the research, doing the research for your books, how do you differentiate between fact and fiction? Well,
I actually think that's the hardest thing, isn't it? Because I have absolutely no way of checking the veracity of what somebody chooses to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
I only, all I can go on is I've gone out asking, and they've responded to requests. And most of these people, I either respond, by email, backwards and forwards, or I actually speak to them over the phone, or where possible, I meet them in person if it's close enough. And all I can say is that it's very, very rare that somebody tells me something that makes me think, you're just pulling my leg. Most people are just so relieved to have somebody listen to their story. And what I get more times than not is, I've never told anybody else this, but because you were asking, I just wanted to get it off my chest, I don't use their real names in the book. My books are all pseudonyms and witnesses,
Understandable.
unless they specifically say.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not getting anything out of this. They're not, there's no payment for it. There's no fame for it. There's nothing in it for them other than getting this off their chest and finally having somebody to talk to about it.
And I would imagine that that's worth its weight in gold. Because here we are in the 21st century, and still we have people who are afraid to come forward and say, you're not going to believe this, but, and this is what our show is all about, is giving the people who have had the experiences that they can come and share with our listening audience and not have to worry about being laughed at, being persecuted, because fact is stranger than fiction.
It really, truthfully is.
Yeah.
And I always think of the old man who spoke to me once. He spoke to me on email, and bless him, he struggled a bit with email because he was in his 80s. But he said to me, I really, really want to get this down so you can understand what I'm saying, because it happened when I was in my 20s, and I've never told a soul before. But I'm so old now, I don't care what people think now.
Yeah.
And he gave me his story, sort of 60-year-old story. And to go all those years not telling his family because he was afraid people would laugh at him. And I always say to people, I'm never going to laugh at you because you cannot possibly top some of the weird things I've been told over the years that people have experienced and seen. And I have, in 99.9% of cases, I have no reason to believe they're not telling me the truth as it happened to them. There's just the odd one where I think, really? But most of them, the vast majority, it's clear that this person is telling me because they need to get it off their chest.
What has been the most comical account that you were ever given?
Oh, that's got to be the disappearing sausage.
The what?
The disappearing sausage. I love the disappearing sausage. So this was a chap who lived in a flat with his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
They knew their flat was fairly haunted. There was various things happened over time. But they have a Sunday routine where every Sunday they make a good old English fry-up, which is bacon, sausage, egg, toast, tea, mushrooms and tin tomatoes. That's the standard English fry-up. And because they've been living together a while, him and his girlfriend have a sort of routine for who cooks which bit of the meal. And they kind of dance around each other in their little kitchen in a sort of choreographed move as to who cooks what bit and plates it up until they sit down for their meal.
Right.
And it's like a little Sunday morning ritual for them. And they always cook, as part of that meal, they always cook 5 sausages. He has 3, she has 2 on her plate. And this particular morning, they're chatting away, the radio's on, they're doing their usual thing. And he plates up the sausages because he's cooking sausages. And they turn around to put the last bits on the plate. And there's 4 sausages sitting on the plate instead of 5. And they both look at it and they look at each other and they look at the plate. And she goes, didn't you cook 5 as usual? And he went, yeah, I definitely cooked 5. Well, where is it then? Well, I don't know. Has it fallen off the plate? So they search under the table. No sign of this sausage. They haven't got any pets, so this isn't a case of a cat or a dog has sneaked past and whipped it away. There's just the 2 of them in the house, in the flat. So they argue a bit over these 4 sausages when there should be 5. Turn back to get the tea off the side and the teapot and what have you. Turn back, and there are 5 sausages sitting on the plate. And he says, to this day, I cannot explain to you, Ruth, how that happened, except when I try and picture it in my mind, those 4 sausages sitting on that patterned plate, I can see in my mind's eye a bit on the plate where the pattern was blurry, as if something was hiding the sausage. When I look back and think about it, he said, but all I can tell you is we both looked at that plate, we argued about it. Why was there only 4 sausages? We turned away, turned back, and there was 5 sausages. He said, when I was frying them in the pan, I know there was 5 sausages. So that sausage was hidden for a while it was sitting on the plate. And that's my favourite story, the disappearing sausage.
So it looks like there was a spirit who had a good sense of humor.
Definitely. He thinks it might have been his grandmother. Yeah, he thought that might have been his grandmother having a bit of a laugh with him.
I've got about 2.5 minutes left, and I'd like to ask you, are all pubs in England haunted?
Most of them, yes. Not every single one, but the vast majority, yes. When you actually ask them, they'll say, yeah, we've got one. And quite a lot of them actually advertise it. Come on in, we have a ghost. But the majority of them have something. Because they're such old buildings. Most of the pubs in the UK are such old buildings. But I do have quite a few haunted pubs that are in modern, purpose-built buildings. So they get haunted as well. So.
Why would a modern building be haunted by a Guinness
who
guzzling?
knows in the UK?
Pardon?
It could be built over anything in the UK.
That's right, yeah.
Going back over history, and I just get the sense that we're such a small geographical space, and we have so many thousand years of history. At some point in time, that's been a piece of land that meant something to somebody. And whether that's a human somebody or whether it's some kind of elemental spirit or whatever, at some point in time it had an attachment to something. So it doesn't matter what you build on it or in what period of time, you might pick up a haunting.
So let me see, I've got about a minute left. What's next for you? You've got this new book that's coming out. You're halfway through it. Do you still continue doing your paranormal investigations? Yeah,
so I've got one coming up in August. Where I'm going into a haunted stately home in Leicestershire, and then I've got one in October where I'm going into an old haunted commercial building down in Bristol. I've got a few coming up. Plus, I always do a few road trips where I look for, along some of my haunted roads to see if I can see everything, except that one I'm scared of. I'm not going to that one again.
Now, if people want to contact you, I've been giving out your Facebook page. Could you give it out to our listeners, please?
Yeah, so it's just Ruth Roper Wilde at Facebook, but also my email, you can contact me that way, and that is also just ruthroperwild@gmail.com. No spaces.
Just the way it is. Ruth, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. Continued success, and I look forward to the next time that you and I meet back here in the X Zone. So until then, take care of yourself and continued success. Did we lose Ruth? Oh my goodness, look at that. We lost Ruth. Talk about timing, Exo Nation. And you know what? I'll bet it's a ghost. I'll bet you it's the ghost that did that. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we start hour number 2 of tonight's show. More from the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. Because here in the X Zone, we're Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight. The X Zone Broadcast Network around the world. Your hometown radio around the world, especially on classic1220.ca. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
No one's gone the telephone. Just me and you and the lights down low.